US House Democrats have released more photos showing Donald Trump and other influential figures with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The US president is pictured alongside Epstein and with a group of women whose faces have been obscured so they can't be identified. Other images show Epstein with Bill Clinton. Also pictured are Bill Gates, Britain's former Prince Andrew, Woody Allen, and as well as Trump's former aide Steve Bannon. It's not known when or where the photos were taken. The pictures released by Democratic lawmakers are only a small part of the more than 95,000 images in Epstein's estate. Now, Trump was asked in the Oval Office about this latest release of photographs.
There were new Epstein photos released today showing you and also Bill Clinton, Steve Bannon. What were your reaction to those new photos that were released today?
Well, I haven't seen it, but I mean, everybody knew this man. He was all over Palm Beach. He has photos with everybody. I mean, almost there are hundreds and hundreds of people that have photos with him, so that's no big deal. I know nothing about it.
Elana Schor joins me from Washington, D.C. now. She's a senior editor at the US news outlet Semafor. Elana, great to see you. We just heard Trump speak. What do you make of his response?
Well, Donald Trump is obviously threatened by these files. Their drip release is not good for him politically, but he is sticking to what he said the whole time, which is, yes, I encountered Jeffrey Epstein, acknowledging they had a social history together, frequently at Mar-a-Lago. But, what's at issue here is honestly the nature of the break between Trump and Epstein, which Trump hasn't really addressed. His aides have said, there's abundance of evidence that Epstein was ejected from Mar-a-Lago, but Trump himself has never really touched on them not speaking anymore. He's just kind of described the relationship as a rift before Epstein's troubles started.
Elana, just in terms of this latest release, what do these particular images actually show that we haven't seen? What contexts do they give us?
To be honest, not a lot. I mean, obviously, it's striking to see Trump, Bill Clinton, other famous faces in these photos, but all of these people, including Woody Allen, who's been rather unapologetic, frankly, in recent months about this, all these are people who we've known have been Epstein associates. Perhaps the biggest revelation in the photos, honestly, is the Trump-branded condoms and the portrayal of sex toys. The Democrats who released these photos suggested that that's the tip of the iceberg and there's more explicit content coming.
Do you get the sense that a release of photos like this still sends Republicans ducking for cover?
Yes and no. I think Republicans have a lot of other problems at this point.
And a spokesperson for Trump has accused the Democrats of cherry-picking the photos in this release. Is that criticism, in your mind, valid in any way?
It's honestly rather valid, and here's why. This is an attempt by Democrats to, as you say, get Republicans to duck and cover. Republicans have an abundance of problems in U.S. politics. Jeffrey Epstein was a huge deal for them a couple of months ago when they're pulling on the economy, when other things were still strong. Now, Jeffrey Epstein is honestly like a bit of a political sideshow in America. He's obviously of great interest, but the law that required the release of these files has passed already. So there's a credible sideshow argument here. What we're not discussing about these photos is the real questions about whether the files will be released on time. Democrats wanted to draw attention to Trump's problems today, but nobody's really discussing the possibility that Trump's own administration might delay the release, come up with excuses to not do the release by December 19th, which the law specifies.
And as we wait for that moment, Trump is using the word hoax. He's used it in reference to the Russia investigation, now this. How do Americans feel at this point, and Republicans? Is there a cumulative effect that's building up against Trump, or perhaps waning interest?
Well, to the point of our conversation so far, I think we've probably already seen the peak and the climax of Jeffrey Epstein's political volatility in America. And again, it's for the reasons that the American economy is showing a lot of danger signs. There are a lot of other bigger substantive problems now hitting Trump, whereas, August, September, Epstein was a big deal. Not to say it's not still important, but in comparison, not as much.
Elana, great to get your insights today. Elana Schor, senior editor at Semafor. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Earlier, DW's Janelle Dumalaon in Washington told me about the reaction to the latest release of the photos from the Epstein estate.
These photographs do feature big names like President Donald Trump and former President Bill Clinton and Microsoft founder Bill Gates. But it's worth noting that these names were associated with Jeffrey Epstein long before these photographs were released. As such, it's not a surprise in and of itself that these photos exist. Rather, it once again underscores to the public just how well-connected Jeffrey Epstein was. And apart from the fact that this was a case that centered on the horrific abuse of young girls, a lot of the public anger really has to do with the fact that Jeffrey Epstein's connections appear to have insulated him from justice. Now, for the White House's part, they released a statement saying that they thought the release of these photos were a selective exercise, that they are cherry-picked photos with random redactions that try and create a false narrative. That is a quote from them. But House Democrats, the ones who released these photos, they said that they're not quite through with going through all the photos yet, that they've already seen some very disturbing material and they've only seen a fraction of it. So they really are priming the public for more coming.
And as to the timing, what is the to gain for Democrats, do you think? Why release these pictures and this video footage now particularly?
Well, just to back up a little bit, there is this law now called the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and that compels the Department of Justice to release all that it has on Epstein before December 19. So that is in a week from now. And clearly, a week ahead of that deadline, Democrats feel that they need to keep the pressure up on the Trump administration to make sure that it really does release all those files amid concerns that not all of those files were released. It might also be possible that ahead of this deadline, the Democrats are trying to potentially in advance counter criticism that they are overemphasizing the president's relationship with Epstein while perhaps overlooking Epstein's association with figures from the Democrat Party like Bill Clinton. In any case, this is an issue that has seen focus on it ebb and flow. The momentum has never disappeared completely, and clearly the Democrats want to keep it that way.
And how do then Republicans feel about all of this? Trump and Bannon next to Epstein. Does the MAGA movement still care, Janelle? Do Americans still get moved by this type of material at this point?
It's a really good question. Now, this isn't the only issue anymore, sort of creating a fissure within the MAGA movement, but this is one of the main ones. Now, remember that law that I mentioned earlier, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, it wasn't just Democrats like Ro Khanna who put that forward, but also figures of the MAGA movement like Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, recently broke completely with the president, and she, of course, is a leading MAGA voice, and her departure is one of the clearest signs of that division within the MAGA movement existing. Now, as for ordinary Americans, again, these photos, they already knew those faces, they already knew those names. Now, they could still be expecting more coming, but it's also worth noting that there was a recent YouGov Yahoo poll that showed that only 25% of Americans thought that the president really followed through on his promise to release all the Epstein files, while at the same time, the release of the Epstein files remains still a very popular issue for Americans. They do want those files released. As such, attention is probably going to stay on this.
DW's Janelle Dumalaon in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much.